Hey everyone, welcome to That Pedal Show. Dan here.
Mick here. Hello, welcome to the show. All right, today, things you can do with your 4-input 2-channel amp. Now, we need to explain something right from the beginning. We're not talking about channel switching amps today. So if you have, for example, a Fender Hot Rod Deluxe, most Mesa Boogies, most Marshalls,
Engel, Diesel,
etc.
Yes.
So many amps are channel switching, i.e. you have a foot switch to switch between channel 1 and channel 2. We're talking today about classic amps such as the Fender Deluxe Reverb, Super Reverb, Twin, not the Princeton.
Not the Princeton, but all the other
Anything
ones.
that's got 2 separate channels that aren't designed to be switched between. And indeed, any 4-input Marshall, which also has 2 channels. Also, Vox AC30.
Vox AC30.
Multiple channels.
Yep.
Also, Vox AC15. Multiple channels. Also, Fender Bassman. Also, Fender Deluxe.
Yes.
Old school amps that have more than 1 channel. That's what we're talking about.
Yep. And there's a bunch of modern variations on those amps, of course. Your matchlesses, your 65 amps. There's all these amplifiers that have taken their topology, shall we say, from these classic amplifiers. Same thing applies.
Yeah. Okay. We're going to be using the Marshall 50-watt Plexi. That's a 1987X model reissue Plexi, and a Fender Deluxe Reverb 65 reissue, just standard amps. But this will work for any amp that has 2 separate channels, with a couple of caveats that we'll explain through the show.
Beautiful.
Okay, number one, the thing that you might not be aware of on most Fender amps, and certainly on this one, it has 2 inputs in one of the channels.
Yes.
Why?
Oh, it's a very clever design. It historically goes back to when the amplifiers were designed to have, they were basically little PA systems, almost a mic input, an instrument input, and it's evolved from there to have inputs 1 and 2, one being the normal input, the second input being a minus 60B input, so it's a little bit quieter.
It can vary from amp to amp, but we believe that the Deluxe Reverb input 1 is here,
Yep.
and input 2 is 60B lower. So we'll just demonstrate that.
Indeed.
And show you a little bit of how that sounds. We've got very high technology close cam today, as you can see. Go for it, Dan.
Okay.
We've got the Deluxe Reverb in its little sweet spot, which is at about 4.5 to 5, and it breaks up quite nicely there.
Yes.
Just going to turn it up a little bit so it's overdriving a bit more. Very nice.
Very nice. So what's interesting,
It's not a huge amount.
it's not a huge amount, but it's much less noticeable when the amp is limiting, because that's minus 60B. It just means it doesn't limit as much. It's a bit cleaner.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting way they've done it. It's a simple input thing with some resistors and stuff, but it's really clever. But the second one's basically an impedance mismatch. But
Right.
because of the nature of guitar, it works beautifully.
Yeah. I guess another practical example use of it could be if you're using a humbucker guitar and it's just overdriving it, you need a bit more headroom, use the second input.
Yes.
You'll get cleaner tones.
Yeah, fantastic.
Okay. Right. It's also worth saying that is the same on the Marshall. Now, the way it's achieved might be done differently internally in the amp, but the effect is the same. You go into input 2, less gain, less output.
Yeah, and a lot of Marshalls, the second input has one less gain stage.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
so it's quite a big deal.
Quite a bit different.
We got to hear it, haven't we, now then? Right, this is going to get louder because we're in the high treble channel of the Marshall, which sounds just unbelievably bad until you turn it up.
Okay.
So we'll have a little bit of this and see if we can cope.
All right. Hurting.
Just a bit, isn't it?
It's
not
just a
night and day.
bit. No. The interesting thing is, it still feels like there's plenty of gain there, but it's just a bit. It's not as noticeable as in the Fender, which is interesting.
Might be that depending on what pickups you've got, how hard you hit, that sensitivity will change depending on your attack to the guitar and what guitar you're using. Anyway, two inputs, one's higher, one's lower. See which one you prefer. Let's move on. Okay, so we know we've got these two separate channels. We'll use the Deluxe Reverb for this. In a more modern amp, you'd have a switch on the floor, right, to switch between your clean and your dirty channel. Well, we can kind of do that with the Deluxe Reverb. We're just going to use both channels independently. How are we doing that, Dan?
We're just going to we've got an ABY switcher here. So we're going to, at the end of our pedal board, we're going straight out of the A output and B output into individual channels. And then we can set up the channels. One can be like a boosted channel. One can be set up a little bit cleaner. Set them up how you like.
So I'm going to set the Deluxe Reverb up. The vibrato channel, which is the one with the reverb. We're going to send this and tremolo, even though it's called vibrato, whole other story. We're going to basically consider this as our lead channel.
Okay.
If we're thinking about traditional rhythm guitar and solo guitar. So as you can see, I've got the vibrato channel here on 7.5, 8, which should give us a nice overdriven tone.
Come on.
And the normal channel on 4, in between 4 and 5. And when Dan switches between those using the ABY switcher, or the AB switcher in this case, we'll get a channel switching out.
Thoroughly satisfying.
I don't think we've ever done that with the Deluxe Reverb before.
No.
It's great.
It's really wonderful.
So if you're shopping for a dual channel amplifier that you can switch between a clean and a dirty sound, there's one.
Yeah. But I love that approach. I remember I bought a 65 amps London when they first came out. and they had one side was like a Marshall, like the 18-watt Marshall. The other side was an AC15 type preamp. But of course, done traditionally, there was no switching in the amp, and then just having an AB switcher to go between the magic.
Yeah, there's a bunch of AB switchers on the market. Dan makes one called the AB Baby. Radial do some good ones. There's plenty out there.
Plenty out there.
That's all you need.
All you need.
All right. So that's the channels used independently. Let's use the channels together, and this is something you would do typically on a Marshall. Problematic in the Fender because the channels in the Fender, the normal channel and the vibrato channel, are out of polarity with one another, and we'll come on to talk about that in a bit. For now, we'll go to the Marshall, and you've seen us do this before on that pedal show. We're going to jump the channels. So we're going to go into the high input of the high treble channel, and we're going to come out of the input 2 of the high treble channel into the main input of the normal channel. Now, it does make a difference which way round you do this, but this is what we're going to do now.
Yes.
Okay. So that's what we've got. Now, what this enables you to do, if we go back to this fairly aggressive sounding high treble channel, what I said earlier about it not being very nice sound until you crank it up. What we can now do, because the channels are linked, is blend in the normal channel. And again, Dan, if you keep playing, I'll take the normal channel out. Why wouldn't you just use the normal channel on its own? Because it sounds like this.
Hey, Mr. Bassman.
Getting a bit better, but that was with the treble and the presence.
Yeah. We've also got very dark speakers in that cab, so that's really interesting.
Well, as a tangent for that, then here's the high treble channel with the treble on 0 and the presence on 0.
Bloody hell.
Yeah, it's not very nice.
No.
And once more, just for the halibut, the blended sound of the two channels.
That sounds great.
Better, isn't it?
Much better.
As you turn it up, you might not want to have them jumped anymore, but certainly for low volume use, it's going to give you a much fuller tone, particularly out of a Plexi style.
Yeah.
Marshall. Okay, if we try that on a Fender now, right? Something different happens. So what we're going to do, from the pedal board into the input, out of number 2 into number 1, there might be a buzz. If Dan just plays now, why?
Because the channels are out of phase with each other. when the volume gets to the same point, they're cancelling each other out for a lot of that signal is being cancelled out. And when you turn it up, then you go, there's one signal has more than the other. But because the signals are out of phase, as you mix them in together, you get cancellation.
So what I've done now is introduce the device that can flip the phase between the two channels, okay? So if you just play again, Dan, you'll be able to hear the difference between in phase and out of phase. That was just that channel.
Right.
That would be the same if it was a Vox AC 15.
Yeah.
So in the Marshall, the channels are the same polarity.
Mm-hmm.
In an AC 15, they're flipped. The way you can tell is if you connect the two channels via the inputs in that way, turn them up to about the same volume, you'll notice there's a point where it gets quieter.
Yeah.
That will never happen if they're the same polarity.
That's right.
It will never get quieter.
Yeah. If they're in phase and they're adding, then the frequencies add. If they're out of phase and you add them together, the frequencies cancel. So you put them in phase and you dial one in and it'll just get louder.
Next cool thing, we're going to go from using both channels together. We're going to keep using both channels together, but we're going to put a pedal in between.
Nice. I love this.
So let's say you've got something like, we'll carry on using the Deluxe Reverb. You can do it in the Marshall as well. No, let's use the Marshall. Let's use the Marshall. The thing I'm struggling with is because the channel sounds so radically different in the Marshall, the results can be slightly odd, but we'll do it anyway. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump them as we did before.
Yep.
We're going to introduce a tube tape echo. So we're going to go into the input of the Marshall, out of input number 2, into the tape echo, and back into the other channel.
Yes.
Now, we do also need to use the phase flipping device here for a different reason.
Indeed. So the reason being is that the pedal that we're putting in the loop actually flips the phase. So we need to flip it back so it sounds groovy.
I'm not going to explain this. I'm just going to put a diagram on the screen.
Nice.
Be much easier. Right, so if I now turn up when I turn the Marshall on and turn the high treble channel up, you should hear almost no delay because there is a tiny bit of bleed actually, I think.
Yeah.
And because the tube tape echo is going before the second channel input, you should now hear it in channel 2.
That is ace.
We got hum all over the place because we've got loads of devices plugged into different outlets and all the rest of it. However, if I flip the phase now, so we know that the tube tape echo also flips polarity.
Yeah.
So if it was in the Fender, it would correct the polarity between the two channels. Now it's throwing them out again, but because we've got the humdinger, haven't really gone near a pedal board yet. That was into the input of the amp, out of the other input, into an echo device, back into the other channel. Blend them.
What is really interesting about that is that I'm not getting the same effect that I would be if I was running the tape echo straight into a distorted amplifier.
Completely. Because the high treble channel in the Marshall is so trebly and so distorted, if you were running a pedal off your board, what he just said, it would sound not very nice. Because that's so dark in the second channel, it's taking off all the bite and treble off it and just leaving you with this almost analog delay kind of sound.
That's beautiful. That's so beautiful.
It's really cool. It's really cool. And then, so you can do that with any pedal. You could do it with a reverb. So if you had something like a Fender Bassman or indeed a Marshall that doesn't have reverb, you could run your reverb device between the two channels and add reverb to that amplifier.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. It is important to say here that we're not into any kind of wet dry. I mean, it is wet dry of sorts because one of the channels is wet and one is dry. But because it's coming out of a single speaker, or indeed if it was a 412, the same thing would be coming out of all the speakers.
Yeah.
So you've got no way of separating it in terms of miking it and panning it. That wouldn't be possible.
But the amp is mixing it. That's the thing.
Yeah.
The amp is mixing those two signals into one thing. I think we can do something similar in a slightly different vein with the pedal board using the Deluxe. The signal path now, the guitar is going in to the Keeley Blues Disorder. After that, it's split and it's going into the AB Baby. Out of the A side of the AB Baby is going back into the Jam Waterfall and the Diamond Memory Lane. After that is going into the volume pedal, and then that is going into channel 1. Then the second output, where it's split after the Blues Disorder, comes straight out of the B into the dry channel. Okay, so
this is wet dry exactly as we do it on
exactly
a
as we
big
do
board.
it, but in one amplifier.
Yeah.
Right. So you can see the chorus pedal and the delay pedal are on, but you can't hear them.
B is feeding the vibrato channel.
Exactly.
A is feeding the normal channel.
Exactly.
So nothing's happening in the normal channel because it's not getting any signal.
No.
But
now, what's really cool about this is that if I turn B off and go to A, I can have like a normal chorus and normal delay, right? If I turn this up. Right, there's quite a lot of effect there, but it's a normal chorus, normal delay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the dry off on the chorus so we only have vibrato, right? Right, so check this out. Turn the volume pedal down. We're going to have the dry channel, and I'm going to blend in the chorus effect. I feel 10 foot tall with a sound like that. It's just
I just
magic.
want to check one final thing. With no effects on, can you just play me a low note? I couldn't quite hear what the phase of the Marshall. I think we were there.
So what's interesting about this is that when we only have the vibrato on,
Oh, it doesn't matter.
the phase is less of a problem because we already have that
only.
delay.
Okay. I think it was. It sounded right to me. The audio will tell the.
Let's try.
The audio will tell the story.
Yeah.
So, if you weren't following, what we did at the end there was combined all of the above. We were initially doing Dan's wet dry into 1 amp into the Deluxe Reverb. I then came out of the wet spare input in the normal channel and plugged it into the Marshall, jumped the Marshall, so we had loads of glorious wet coming out of the Marshall as well.
It really is a glorious thing.
The only thing we should have done is added the tube tape echo in between, but
Yeah.
anyway, you get the point.
Yeah. So by doing the wet dry into a single amplifier, it's not the same
As having two separate
as having
amps.
two separate, because you don't get the image, you don't get that space, but it is still a really cool thing because what you do get is more clarity from that first channel, the dry channel,
Yeah.
and which we heard really clearly when we had the tape echo
Yeah.
in the Marshall. We still had that attack from that first channel. So it's definitely worth trying. It's, you know, a lot of us have these amplifiers with these two channels, and
One of them sits
one of us,
unused.
exactly, it's really
Yeah.
worth trying this stuff out.
And also, there's lots of people, perhaps not quite so many that watch that pedal show, but there's plenty of people out there that just love the sound of their guitar plugged into their amp, and they
Yeah.
don't want to put a load of pedals in between. This is a nice way to do it because you can still have your guitar just plug straight into your amp as normal and then put the pedals in between into the other channel.
Great.
Speaking purely personally, I prefer that approach to a modern channel switching amplifier.
Oh, yeah.
Where the differences between the channels are so great. Now, it might be that your particular style of music or style of playing requires that. Dan and I think, would go this way every time.
Yeah.
Every time.
Yeah. There's enough variety, even with just the way the channels are voiced. One channel not having reverb, that's adds a whole different character.
It's cleaner straight away.
Yeah.
The normal channel in a Deluxe Reverb is cleaner than the reverb channel because the reverb overdrives as well.
Yeah. So, you know, getting the balance of those two, it's a really great way to do it.
Great.
That was really fun.
Good. Lots of tips there. Please try them. Honourable mentions, other ways that you can use multiple input, old school multiple channel amps. Dan came up with a good one earlier.
Oh, just when your friend comes over, wants to have a jam, hey man, just plug into each one has a channel.
Which is kind of what they were designed for in the first place.
Yeah, but you keep the channel with the reverb. Let your friend plug into the one without any reverb.
Anything else? Any other honorary mentions?
Absolutely. If you want to jam along to backing tracks, take the, signal out of your phone or whatever, plug it into the normal channel.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to sound great because it's not a full frequency speaker, but it could work nonetheless.
Yeah, well, you're only going to be doing that reasonably. If you're at home and you just need a bit of, you can't, playing it out of your phone isn't an option. Headphones can be just plug into the amp.
Nice.
Sound great.
You won't blow anything up.
No.
Don't worry about that. But as a note of caution, whenever you plug anything in to anything ever, volume's on 0. Just start with the volumes on 0 and bring them up, because many is the time where the amp will be wide open, you'll plug something in and
Kaboom.
kaboom. Yeah. Not boom in the amp, but boom in your hearing perhaps.
Indeed.
Good. All right.
Fun.
That was good.
Great
Some
fun.
interesting things.
Yeah. Brilliant. Massive thank you to our patrons on Patreon. Massive thank you to anyone that's gone to thatpedalshow.com. And a massive thank you to anyone that's gone to thatpedalshowstore.com and grab some merch.
Do it.
Yeah.
Merchy up. It's how we fund this show and we really appreciate it.
Indeed.
Good.
Massive thank you to our preferred retailers. Links in the description below. Have a fantastic week and we will see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.